Hey guys, David Doucette here, Architect Exam Prep. Just wanted to give you a heads up, let you know that the ARE podcast is sponsored by Architect Exam Prep, and that is myself and Eric. If you need any study materials, head over to our website, architectexamprep.com. You can check out our materials there. And also, if you need coaching, we offer that as well, whether you need it for one division or you want to jump all the way in and join our Platinum coaching program. You'll find all the information on our website, architectexamprep.com. With that said, let's get into the podcast. ARE Podcast, episode number 52.
Welcome to the ARE Podcast. ARE Podcast, where it's all about encouraging and inspiring you today so you can fulfill your dream of becoming a licensed architect tomorrow. And now your host, David Doucette.
Hello, and welcome back to another micro podcast episode. The micro podcast is where we cover a topic in 10 minutes, and it's a stretch for us, but we have been successful in doing that. So without further ado, what's our micro topic today, Eric?
Your job on test day is not to answer 100% of the questions in the order that they give them to you. Your job on test day is to actually rack up as many points as possible in the time provided. It is a subtle but very important distinction.
And okay, but so should I start with the case studies first, because aren't those worth more points? Aren't case studies worth 2 points?
Oh my gosh, David and I get this question constantly. Shouldn't I have a brilliant strategy? I'll outthink NCARB and outthink everybody, and I'll start with the case studies first. No, please don't do that. What we've seen over and over and over again is that people that do that end up blowing all of their time on the case studies, which are all worth 1 point each, just like the other items. So they blow all their time in pursuit of 20 points instead of the majority of their time in pursuit of the 65 or 85 other points. Don't start with case studies first. It's a dumb, failed idea and it could really backfire in your face.
And just to clarify, so nobody is confused, and I'm not getting emails, and Eric is not getting chats. David did not say that the case studies are worth 2 points. I was being facetious. All the questions are worth 1 point, and that is it. And as Eric said, your goal is to rack up as many as possible. So, Eric, let me ask you this. Do we get partial credit? Because I know there's a lot of answers that require multiple answers. So do we get partial credit if we get some of them right?
Unfortunately, no, not yet. Now, in the past, the AREs have included partial credit in older versions of the exam. 3.1 was infamous for partial credit. And on the vignettes in 3.1 and 4.0, you could get partial credit. That is not the case here. There is no partial credit. You either get it right or get it wrong. So even if it's one of those those questions that says choose 3, even if you pick 2 out of 3 correctly, sorry, you either have it all right or you don't.
So it's all worth 1 point or it's all worth 0, right?
If you get it right, it's all worth 1 point. If you get it wrong, it's worth 0. If you leave it blank, it's worth 0. So our advice is never leave anything blank. But remember, your goal on test day is not to answer 100% of the questions in the order provided. Your goal is really to rack up enough points to pass in the time provided. Very different mindset.
And that gets into the time management, which we often talk about. But it's important, I think, as you're saying, the idea is we need as many points as possible, because I know candidates do run out of time. Those who haven't prepared a time management strategy ahead of time run out of time. So there's points there that they didn't even get to go after or even get to take an attempt at, which is really sad.
Yeah, running out of time is perhaps the most tragic circumstance that can happen on the test, because you really have no idea how your performance was overall, because the score report looks at the total number of questions. So you might end up showing as level 4s across the board when in fact the questions that you did answer you're doing pretty well at. So running out of time is perhaps the worst thing that can happen on the test, and that's why your job is really to kind of play traffic cop. Right? You get a question, it's going to take you a while. Our advice is, mark it and come back to it later. Let's just get through and rack up the points we know we can achieve. And you might end up taking, 2 or 3 passes through the test that way. but at least that way you know that you've answered the questions you can answer and you've racked up as many points as you can in the time provided. And if you've got 20 questions marked at the end of it, well, then you can kind of just, run out your time answering those remaining 20, knowing that 80 questions you answered clearly.
Well, just the way you're describing that gives me a little anxiety. It just sounds like now I have to rush through the questions to try and accomplish this goal. But I don't think that's what you're saying. But that sounds like you're saying I got to rush.
Well, you can't dilly-dally, that's for sure. And you certainly don't have time to overthink the questions. What we found is that people that are clear on the topics, they don't need a lot of time for the questions. The questions really were designed to be answered in about 90 seconds or less. So if you know your stuff, getting through the test on time is easy. And this is not my word. This is the word of thousands of candidates that have told us that they got the time management down, they got the concepts down, and they didn't struggle at all with time management. I think it's when you get in there and you start playing the yeah but game, right? And you're trying to answer every single question in order that you're really just blowing your time on a bunch of really hard questions that really are only worth a point anyway.
So the ultimate strategy in us realize when we walk into the testing center, our goal, in the next 3.5 hours, whatever time we're allotted, is to rack up as many points as we can. That, put in the simple term, that's our goal, right?
Yeah, you're think of it more like you are Mario jumping and collecting coins in the video game. That's kind of more of who you are. You're just trying to rack up as many coins as possible, gold coins as possible. And so that means if you get a question that totally just knocks you for a loop, you know what? Mark it, come back to it later. It's not worth it. It's only worth 1 point. Don't let it derail you. Don't spend 10 minutes trying to answer that one question. That is a lower priority question for you because you're already in over your head. Why are you wasting time on it? Go instead and just rack up the points that you know you can achieve and then come back to that one later. It is the perfect strategy for getting through this, managing your time, and also knowing confidently that you're getting better.
Okay, well, when you explain it like that, it sounds like a very simple strategy and almost like, well, why do I need to listen to a podcast about this? Like, doesn't everybody just go in knowing that they just need to rack up as many points possible? Like,
oh my gosh, nobody knows this. This is news to every candidate. And if you're listening, don't even pretend like you knew this as a strategy. You didn't. You were going to go in there and answer whatever question they give you in the order they give it to you because you don't know any better. We're telling you, you don't have to do that. Remember that when you sit down, the computer has 4 banks of questions and randomly picks one and then randomly administers questions to you from those 4 banks of questions. So you could end up getting 10 really hard ones in a row and then, 20 easy ones. So if you get those 10 hard ones in a row, mark them, come back to them later, and then instead go for the 20 points. It's really just a game of numbers at this point.
And how long, I know it's going to depend on the division because each division has a little bit different time, but what is a quick time management strategy about how long we should be spending on each question?
So for the regular item questions, that would be multiple choice, hotspot, drag and drop, fill in the blank, those questions. Ideally, you'd be spending about 90 seconds per question, which gives you basically enough time to read it once or twice, go through the answers, narrow it down, and answer it again. Again, you kind of need to know your stuff. And then that leaves you about 5 minutes per question for the case study items. But again, the answering of the case studies is still a 90-second exercise, but that extra time is just time for you to go through the case study documents, which you generally will need.
And we need about, hour and a half, hour and 15 minutes, depending on the division for case studies at the end?
Yeah, there's a couple ways to look at it. You could just kind of budget an hour and a half and just know that you're going to leave that amount of time for the case studies. Or another way is to look at the number of case study items and then just multiply each by 5 minutes. So if there's 20 items, that's 100 minutes. So you're still in kind of that hour and a half range. But don't stress about it. Don't get too bent out of shape. It's not an exact science here. You'll notice that, a quarter of the case study questions you'll be able to answer even without looking at the documents, really, just by using common sense. So some of those case study items you'll get through pretty quickly. Others will take you a little longer. Remember here, the goal is that the average is about 5 minutes per case study item and 90 seconds for each regular item.
And I know one of the strategies we teach our coaching candidates is 20 minutes, 20 questions in 20 minutes. And people have had good luck with that. It's a marker. I mean, if you want to do 19 or whatever it is, but The point of that is you shouldn't be spending 20 minutes on the first 10 questions, because if you do, you're already way behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, it's almost like in the coaching, we call it the marathon approach, right? What we've observed is that people will spend their first 20 minutes answering 4 questions. Well, that's 5 minutes per question. That's way too much time, right? And then suddenly they'll realize, oh God, I'm running out of time, and they'll rush. So they're using way too much time per question at the front, and they're using too little time per question at the back, and they're rushing to get through. And that is just a candidate who is out of control in terms of their time management strategy. A much better idea would be just a steady, consistent pace all the way through. So what we tell people is use your first 20 minutes to answer 20 questions, right? That way you're giving yourself approximately a minute per question. It's setting that pace, and you just continue that pace all the way through the test, and you'll have time left over. And remember, this isn't our opinion. This is, we've given this advice, David and I have given this advice to thousands of candidates now who've used this successfully. So just trust us on this. It's the best time management tip we can give you. In your first 20 minutes, answer 20 questions. If it means that you skip 5 to get to those 20, great. But just you're essentially triaging the questions. Ooh, that one will take me too long. Skip it, mark it for later. Ooh, that one's a pain. I'll skip that, mark it for later. Oh, here's a good one, right? Just go through it. But your goal is to answer 20 questions in those first 20 minutes, and your pace will be perfect all the way through.
So what you're saying is in the first 20 minutes, whatever happens in the first 20 minutes will essentially dictate what happens the rest of the exam. For example, if I'm a basket case in the first 20 minutes and I only get through 5 questions, that's indicative, the basket casedness, right? That's indicative of how the rest of my exam is going to go, right? I mean, I'm not going to make up, or I'm not going to recover from that.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people that, they go into the test knowing that their kryptonite is, structural calculations, right? And they're worried about structural calculations. And the first question right out of the gate is a structural calculation. That one question is enough to throw them for a loop and really knock them off their game and mess them up for the entire test. But what they're failing to realize is that the questions are all random anyway. It was just stupid, dumb chance that you happen to get a structural calculation right up front. It is not indicative of the whole test. Do not let it affect you. Do not let it break your concentration or your confidence. If you don't like that question, it's only worth 1 point anyway. You could skip it and come back to it. Or if you hate it that much, you could blow it off altogether. It's only a point. There's certainly plenty of other opportunities for you to rack up points and pass this thing without letting one question derail your aspirations here.
All right, we're at our time. This 10 minutes goes by so fast. So our racking up as many points as we can on exam day is the lesson. Any last bit of advice, Eric, in under a minute about what a candidate can do when they are walking into the exam, when they are about to sit at their computer? What's some last minute advice?
Breathe. That's my last minute advice. Your brain needs oxygen to function. Your body needs oxygen to survive. It is a 4 or 5 hour just sitting marathon that you're going through. Breathe, calm down, lower your blood pressure, relax. You've got this, right? You don't need to be that worried about it. Just calm yourself and just get your head in the game and just do the thing.
Alrighty, well said. Well, that's going to do it for us today in today's micro podcast. On behalf of Eric, my name is David, and we will see you on the next ARE podcast.
Listening to the ARE podcast. Be sure to visit architectexamprep.com and check out our other podcast episodes, video tips, and the ARE blog. Remember to plan, practice, and pass.